welcome. Apologies for this super odd layout. It's bad lighting. It looks like crap. I am in a hotel. I do apologise. However, I have to get this news out to you because Terminator Dark Fate just keeps, well, shit in the bed, doesn't it, quite frankly. Terminator Dark Fate director says he will not work with James Cameron again. Hardly surprising. This started to come out the moment the movie had even been released. We had comments from James Cameron saying there was blood on the walls in the editing bay, and Tim Miller was blaming the fans prior to the release of the movie. And now we get them literally out and out saying that they won't be working with one another again. I do feel like Tim Miller is somewhat shooting himself in the foot here. I don't think anyone will deny that. I mean, you're dealing with James Cameron, a very large person in the industry, and you're now saying that you won't be working with him again. Well, Tim Miller's got some balls, I'll tell you that. But let's get into it, right? Let's have a look. So, Terminator Dark Fate director Tim Miller says he is still processing the box office failure of the attempted franchise. But I bet you anything, ladies and gents, of course, just all those devout misogynists that hated the film in a storied franchise with strong female characters. They just can't handle strong female characters, can they? That's probably what he's processing. Or hopefully he's processing the fact that you shouldn't slate and out and out insult the fan base prior to the film's release. How about that? That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So anyway, this is obviously the attempted relaunch that reunited stars Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton, blah blah blah, under the producer James Cameron. Now James Cameron was influential in this film being made. A lot of people will say that this is James Cameron's film, and this article and the comments by Tim Miller seem to indicate a lot of it was actually his decision. However, you've got to remember that James Cameron sold the rights immediately back, or at least leased the rights immediately back to Skydance, David Ellison's company. So his involvement in this is minute. And I think Tim Miller's frustrations with James Cameron are warranted, because I think, you've got to remember this is a guy that just turned up in San Diego Comic-Con on a big screen telling everyone that Edward Furlong would be back in the movie, despite knowing that he wouldn't be back in the movie in any capacity. So I think Tim Miller's absolutely not the be all and end all. He's not a awesome dude by any stretch, and neither's James Cameron. They're both in the wrong here. But it's always interesting when the dust kind of settles, they're still bitching about one another. And I do find this an interesting element with respect to the industry on a whole. You can really tell that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes here than previously. I mean, most films where people are working on, they have a good time. They enjoy working with one another. So if you're coming out on the back end of a movie's release, whether it's a big budget film or a small indie film, and they're slating one another in so many words, you know that a lot of bad things happened on set or in the editing bay. And I think that's important, So, interestingly enough, despite lingering trauma from Dark Fate, which has grossed $234 million worldwide, so it's not even covered its actual budget. I mean, the production budget would be, 180 to 200 million, plus marketing, another 150 odd million. It's not covered anything yet. This is a gross loss. In the best of ways, I guess. Hopefully, this franchise will now be put on ice for a while and given to someone who actually understands it, which I guess a lot of people will kind of throw out now that James Cameron does understand it, but evidence being here that he doesn't understand his franchise. He understood it when he didn't make any more movies, and I think there's definitely an argument to be had for that. He was done up until 2. He'd finished at 2, and then that was it. And I think that's where it should have ended, really. Now, Tim Miller's interesting comments are as follows, and I quote, "So, even though Jim is a producer and Skydance's David Ellison is a producer, and they technically have final cuts and ultimate power," that's because Tim Miller's not exactly a big name in Hollywood, despite doing one film. Shock horror. And my name is still on it as director, Miller told KCRW's The Business. "Even if I'm going to lose the fight, I still feel this obligation to fight, because that is what the director is supposed to do, fight for the movie." Look, the fact that you even feel like you have to fight for the movie shows that the vision between each of these three people were not aligned, and ultimately that's where most of the issues have clearly occurred. No one should have to feel that you out and out have to fight anyone just to get a collaborative vision together. Clue in the name there, collaborative, right? So anyway, he continues, Miller was admittedly unsure how Cameron was going to react to his director's cut, but after a screening, the lights come up, and there was a lot of stuff that I had cut that Jim thought was important, and scenes we'd shot that we'd had disagreements on, Miller said. But the lights come up, and Jim says, we've got a movie. Apparently, again, according to Tim Miller, according to the director, most of their disagreements revolved around small lines Miller said were poetic and beautiful, but Cameron vetoed them. I think this is probably a little bit of a PR spin, because obviously since the dust has settled on this project, Tim Miller is now essentially just renowned as making an action movie, and that's all he's really renowned for, which could be the case. Like, Tim Miller definitely does do good action, and maybe that is the case, but to now say, you know, James Cameron vetoed lines that were apparently poetic and beautiful. Look, if Tim Miller had anything to do with some of the lines in that film, nothing would have been poetic and beautiful about it, because they were just ridiculous. Linda Hamilton saying, I'll be back. Why? I kill Terminators? What? Some of the line delivery was just atrocious. The line delivery from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger is an absolute hero of mine. Fantastic dude. Wholly likable. I don't think, you know, most people can really deny that. But even he, you know, even he in this, again, he's one of the best parts of it. But yeah, no, not a good look for him. And anyway, so Tim Miller continued and said, I would fight for that line because it was important to me, but does the audience really care? Probably not. Well, look, at the end of the day, I think that's putting a bit of a negative spin on your audience's intelligence, to be perfectly honest. As far as Donnybrook's go, it's not that big of a deal. So Miller and Cameron had larger disagreements about Legion, which is obviously just Skynet 2.0. It's Skynet Light, and with one of the most unimaginative names in the entire planet, as if we've never heard Legion before. So its role apparently in the future, Tim Miller and James Cameron had massive disagreements on. So Cameron preferred a future where humanity was victorious, and Miller preferred the opposite. I suggested Legion is so powerful, the only way to beat it is go back in time and strangle it in the crib, Tim Miller said. Jim turned around and said, what's dramatic about the humans losing? And I said, well, what's dramatic about the humans winning? And they just need to keep on winning. And obviously then went off and said, you know, I like a last stand. But James Cameron is not his sort of thing, which is interesting to say. And then categorically Tim Miller did come out and just basically said, no, I won't be working with James Cameron again. When asked directly, he said, I can say no, but it has nothing to do with whatever trauma I have from the experience. Using the words like trauma, fight, things like this, that is not indicative of a good and healthy production for this film in any way, shape or form. You should not be using terminology like trauma, fighting. Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. But Tim Miller said it's more that I just don't want to be in a situation again where I don't have the control to do what I think is right, he said. I just got an email last week from Jim who said, I know we clashed a little bit, I put it all down to two strong creative people with differences of opinion, and I think it made the movie better. I'll be back in LA in December, let's go get a beer. Now, read between the lines on this, again, using words like trauma, fighting, clashing, things like this. The words from James Cameron, blood on the walls, all of this kind of nonsense. This is Tim Miller covering himself for essentially the next projects that he's going to be able to get in Hollywood, which are tiny, small, independent films. No one's going to want to work with Tim Miller again. He's lost a studio $100+ million. Easy. So no one's going to want to work with him again. To say that he's now saying, you know, I don't want to be in a situation where I've got no control, etc., etc., is just him covering his arse. Miller admitted he feels horrible over Dark Fate's poor box office performance, saying, I'm sure we could write a book on why it didn't work. Probably don't, you know, bitch to fans, to be fair. I'm still not sure and I'm processing, but I'm very proud of the movie. You shouldn't be. It's terrible. The reactions seemed to hate the most about the movie were things I can't control. I can't control that you didn't like Genesis or you felt betrayed by Terminator 4. I can't help that. That wasn't most people's issues. Most people's issues were it was just bad, to be perfectly honest. So look, that's the be all and end all of this. There's not really too much else to say. Tim Miller is categorically just covering his arse here. I think that's, again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that he will only be getting small indie projects from now on, and I don't necessarily believe that's even a bad thing. I think if Tim Miller has any directive clout, any creativity in his bones, I think small indie projects will be a good way for him to portray that. So yeah, this is Tim Miller doing a bit of PR spin. Yes, this is Tim Miller covering his ass because he's basically failed currently in Hollywood on a big blockbuster scale. But hopefully he will come back and kind of use this as a stepping stone moving forwards. But yeah, I mean, using words like trauma, fight, all of this kind of nonsense is really, really not good. It's indicative of a very bad production. So anyway, apologies for the strange setup. I hope you enjoyed this nonetheless. I'd love to hear your thoughts though, so please do let me know down below in the comment section. If you are new here, make sure you do hit subscribe. You can stay up to date on the world of pop culture and movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Again, I am traveling, I'm away, funnily enough, on the set of a movie. So videos will be a little bit sporadic here and there, but I will still do my best to obviously update you on current events. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. I've been Mr. H. Take care.